What is up, everybody? Welcome back. Today we're doing a One Piece tier list for the arcs leading up to Wano. Now, originally I wasn't going to do Wano because I don't really want to grade it until it's finished. I feel like that makes the most sense, but they have it on this list, so I figured I'd throw it where I think it's going to be. Actually, no, scratch that. I'm going to put it where I think it is now. And then if it changes, I can always do an update or something later. This should be every arc. I honestly didn't go through it up until now, so we'll see. Now with Orange Town, it's not my favorite arc, but I do like a lot of the elements in it. It kind of gives us a good view of the characters, basically Luffy, Nami, and Zoro. And so the thing I really like about Orange Town is that it sets the idea that, you know, devil fruit, strong pirates, all this kind of stuff is very uncommon. People don't normally see devil fruits around. They don't normally see any strong pirates because this is East Blue. This is where nothing is happening. So Buggy, and we all know how strong Buggy actually is, but Buggy here is like a really strong pirate. People are terrified of Buggy. As far as a rank, I'm gonna put it at a solid B. Nothing like extravagantly special, but I do think it's a pretty good arc. Arlong Park is an S for me. Now, there are so many elements of Arlong Park that I absolutely love, and this is the arc that I often, when I'm telling people that they should watch One Piece, they should read One Piece, this is the arc where I'm like, if you don't love it in Arlong Park, then you probably aren't going to love it for the rest of the series. Arlong Park is the setting point for kind of the core fundamentals of One Piece. You know, about the crew fighting for each other, about them each having their own battles to deal with. And this is kind of the going part of Luffy saving his crewmates. And I think a lot of the moments in Arlong Park are really solid. We have the walk, which is probably one of the greatest One Piece moments. We have pretty much the entire Luffy versus Arlong fight, which I think is really good, especially when he gets to the end, when we finally get the last hit, and then Luffy calls out to Nami. Like that all encompasses just what One Piece kind of goes for, especially in a structured arc like this. Next is Logtown, and this is probably going to be a B for me because this is a story building kind of arc. There isn't really a lot of action. We meet certain characters, like we meet Smoker, we meet Dragon, we see the new Alabasta, we see Buggy again, but there's not a lot going on. It's mostly just story building. Now, Alabasta it's an arc that's kind of, in my opinion, filled with things that aren't exactly, you know, story pressing. So it's not like it's a entirely world building arc, and it's not an entirely action segmented arc. It's kind of like on the cusp of that because we have really solid fights. We have Zoro, Mr. One, Luffy, Crocodile. We even have Nami in her fight. But as far as like story building, the most we're doing here is getting introduced to a warlord and kind of understanding how that system works for and against the world. I will put Alabasta I'm going to put it at the top of B for now. Davy Back. Davy Back can go at C. I don't dislike Davy Back, but it doesn't really do anything for me. And I'm checking to see, I don't see, okay, so Davy Back might include the Aokiji versus Luffy fight, which that moment aside is amazing. I love that part because I think that's roughly at the end of Baby Back and right before Water 7 in S Lobby. So I don't think they have because I don't know they have Water 7 in S. Yeah, I'll include it in the Davy Back, and that'll keep it from being a D tier. NS Lobby is obviously an S tier arc. I'm gonna put that right up front here. I love everything about NS Lobby. Pretty much, if Arlong Park is kind of like the early core build of One Piece, NS Lobby is the meat of it. NS Lobby pretty much encompasses everything that I guess Arlong Park did, but on a bigger scheme. We have the whole rescuing a Nakama and bringing them to our crew aspect in Robin, but we also have the inner conflict of Luffy and Usopp. We have the conflict of losing Mary. We have the conflict of going against the world government. Everyone's getting massive power-ups and character development. This arc has so much in it, and it handles it so well. I don't think there's any other arc that, in my opinion, I've watched that was as comprehensive as NS Lobby. Like, there's so much of the story that is built off this arc alone that if it wasn't for basically the entire war scheme that happens afterwards. And S Lobby will probably be one of the most influential arcs for the story. And I'll add Water 7 because Water 7 is also going to go up here in S. I think, one, I put those two together whenever I think about the arcs. And two, I really like, for Water 7 especially, the way they handle characters, introducing all CP9 as their, their aliases, their covers. I liked all those characters. I liked the citizens of Water 7. I like kind of the background characters, Kokoro, Chimney. Like, everyone in this arc is pretty interesting. And it's not that the other arcs might have interesting characters, but it's different and refreshing to see the characters in Water 7. It just feels like a new breath kind of came into the show and came into the series. And you can just feel like the new energy coming through. Post and S Lobby is going to go at A. I think that's a really solid world building segment. It gets the ace of Blackbeard. I think this also includes the Whitebeard and Shanks confrontation. And this would also include like Robin talking out Kiji and that kind of stuff. Basically, world building to a T. This does all of that exceptionally well. Syrup Village is gonna be a C tier arc for me. Oddly enough, it has one of my favorite panels in the entire manga, but as far as an arc, it's just okay to me. It doesn't really carry a lot of weight as far as story building. It doesn't really do a whole lot for the characters. We learn about the characters, but no one really grows. Usopp is still Usopp, Nami's Nami, Zoro's Zoro, Luffy's Luffy. Nothing changes. We don't really get anything new there. It's kind of just, we're adding Usopp to the crew. Thriller Bark. Now, a lot of people don't like Thriller Bark, and I've only come to know that because I watch more and more reactions of Thriller Bark. And all the reactors ever say is that no one likes Thriller Bark. People always say, oh God, Thriller Bark's coming up next. And I don't understand that. I love Thriller Bark. I mean, obviously it's where Kuma shows up, so that's some of the bias. But I think Thriller Bark, as far as story goes, it's so interesting. It's so funny. It's well animated. Like, I don't know what there isn't to like about Thriller Bark. And of course, we have the nothing happened moment. We have pretty much every part with Kuma is amazing. I'm just gonna go ahead and say that it's absolutely fantastic. The only downside I see with Thriller Bark is that there was a lot of Luffy chasing after Doppelman, and I feel like that's probably stretched out a bit for the anime itself. It's probably not as long. I'd have to go back and reread it to see how long it actually felt in the manga, but honestly, it didn't seem that bad to me. It didn't feel like it dragged on. We get Brook in this arc, and I absolutely love Brook. And then we have the whole mystery about the giant people within the fog that we still haven't figured out yet. I don't know. Thriller Bark is a solid arc to me. I love it so much. I'm going to put that at A. Baratier is going to be... I'm going to put this at the top of B. Now, Baratier is solid for numerous reasons. The main one I think of is bringing Mihawk in. Basically, we get to see what a warlord looks like. And the fact that he's so strong that literally no one else on the screen can hold a candle to him. And we're introduced to him so early. I think that's probably 40, 50 episodes in, a couple of chapters in. We meet Mihawk really, really early. And there's nothing we can do about that because he rolled up, said, you know what, I'm not done with you. And he goes on to fight Don Krieg and his entire crew because he was bored. That's so wild to me. And the fact that we get that so early is just tantalizing for what's to come. Because we know that this is going to be Zoro's goal, and eventually he's going to have to beat Mihawk. So we get to see Zoro's ladder. And it's a little bit different because we know what Luffy's goal is, but we don't necessarily see Roger's ladder for a very long time. We don't see what he's accomplished. We just know he's king of the pirates. He's done great things. So this is really a good benchmark for how high the crew is going to get. And there's also, of course, the story with Sanji, and we have the entire movement around that. Now, Don Krieg's not my favorite villain. Gen's awesome. I do like the Sanji fights. And I also love Zeph. But the story itself, again, this is one of those moments where it's not necessarily development for a lot of characters. It's more of just we're getting a new crew member. So we're still building on something. We're pretty much getting Sanji to join our crew. Sabaody is going to be S tier. And I'm going to put it, dare I say, above an S Lobby? I think I want to. I absolutely love Sabaody. So my favorite episodes are 376 to 378, and then 400 to 405. And of course, yes, they all have committed, but for Sabaody in particular, 400 to 405 are really intense, fantastic episodes, and just an amazing part of the story whatsoever. We get introduced to the supernova, we get introduced to Rayleigh. We learn so much about the history of the world without learning about the history of the world. It's crazy how much story building goes into this, but not just story building, but amazing fight sequences, characterization. There's a lot packed into this arc, and it's not even that long of an arc. If I recall, it's pretty short as far as like 20 or so episodes, probably not as many chapters, but it's a really short arc. And of course, it's got like my favorite characters in it. It's got Law, it's got Kuma, it's just missing out Kiji. But I mean, Kizaru's here and I love Kizaru. It's got so much for me. It's just like the things I cherish about One Piece are in this arc. It's got a lot of emotion to it for being so short. You have the entire story with Hachi, you have pretty much the entire vanishing of the crew is heart-wrenching. And it's interesting because the more I watch other people read through and get to this arc, the more I see them understand that this isn't necessarily the end of things. And I think about it, and it's like when I was reading through it, I didn't have the idea that, okay, there's another 500 episodes, so this isn't the end. I went into it when it was happening, so the stress was real for me, and that just amps up the arc. Reverse Mountain is going to be at C, and I think I'll put it at the top of C for now. This is another story building arc, and it links well with Thriller Bark and Brooks' whole past. I think that's what really makes this arc more impressive, is that it links up so well as the story continues. You know, as we get further in the story, as we learn new people, as we learn new things about how the world's worked, this arc in particular becomes more important. Amazon and Lily. Yeah, I'm comfortable putting this at B, above Orange Town. I'll put that there. I have no particular feelings towards Amazon Lily. I think it's a good showcase arc because we get to see Boa, we get to see Luffy, and we're introduced to this idea of hockey like fully. We get to see the Kuja use it, we get to see Luffy use it unconsciously again. We kind of get a lot of hints and drops for it. And then we get some world dumps with Boa Hancock and Celestial Dragons. Plus, we get to figure out that Ace is about to be executed, which is one of the biggest things of the arc and one of the biggest things of the series. As far as characters, there really only are a few that stick out, just because I think Amazon Lily is meant to be an arc trained on Luffy and Boa. It really doesn't leave space for other characters to shine. They are introduced, and we do meet people like Margaret, but it doesn't shine on them. Whiskey Peak will be C. I think it's a cool arc, but nothing really fantastic about it. You know, I didn't really find anything amazing. This is where we run into Vivi, do the whole Broke Works thing. But, you know, for what it is, it's a setup arc. So not even like story building, not even like an action arc. It's completely a setup arc for what's coming up ahead, which isn't a bad thing. It doesn't rank as high for me. Marineford is S tier, and I'm going to put it above Arlong Park because it has Whitebeard, and Whitebeard is amazing. And basically everything about Marineford is so well done. Now, I guess there's a distinction between, because a lot of these arcs I read, and probably the earlier ones were the ones I watched. So probably up to Marineford, I think, is where I was kind of mostly watching the anime. And then afterwards I switched to just reading the manga again. Because I started off reading the manga and I only read the manga, and then I would do both. And then at Marineford, I just started reading manga again because the anime wasn't there yet. So Marineford, it's the arc that doesn't have any of the crew, which is so weird because Luffy basically has a new ragtag crew from Impel Down, and we don't see any of the actual crew except for like the little blurbs of where they're now, what they're doing. But the weight, the effect like of Marineford, and the fact that we introduce all these new characters and we actually care about them. Like, I think this is the difference between something like Marineford and something like Amazon and Lily, where you have so many new characters, but they are important. Like you meet Whitebeard, and a majority of like Whitebeard's division captains, his alliance members. We meet a lot of the Marines. We see a lot of old characters that we met before. We have the warlords here. We basically have a mosh posh of old characters, new characters, just a lot of important people in one place. And of course, this is where we get our first significant deaths. We get Whitebeard, we get Ace. Basically, Marineford is the changing point of the entire story. What happens here sculpts the rest of the arcs, and it still hasn't like let up. Like that effect that Marineford had hasn't changed in the slightest. It's insane just how much was affected by this one arc. And it's also well done. Now, like I said, I ended up reading Marineford, and I think for the most part, reading it was very enjoyable. The anime made things look really good, but it also changed a few things here and there. So I definitely did both, and I often go back and watch Marineford instead of reading it, but just this arc in anime and manga form is fantastic. I'm gonna put Logtown next to Whiskey Peak and Reverse Mountain. I think it works pretty much the same. It's a setup slash story arc where we're learning about things for the future. Now we do get some interaction between like brokers. We get Mr. 3, we get April Fools, we get things like that. So we have some mild fights here and there, but we get Dory and Broggy, and we get to hear about their entire race, pretty much Elbaf, which we will come back to in multiple points in which we are still expecting to see further down the story. So Little Garden does a good job of setting the tone for what arcs are coming with that. Post-war. Now this, I think, mainly covers the ASL arc. And I don't see that anywhere else. Yeah, I think this covers ASL. This one's going to go in A. I think that backstory was just well done. It introduces Sabo. It lets us see how they grew up. We get to see Garp again. There's a lot of feelings in this arc. Now, this arc is clearly carried by Marineford because, you know, they're side by side. That arc exists because Marineford exists. But Dwarf is all about that flashback. Basically, the meat of it is just learning about Ace, Sabo, and Luffy. And I mean, that time it's fantastic. Seeing how they interact with one another, seeing what happened to Sabo, learning what happened with Ace, learning what happened with Garp. Like, we get to see so many characters that we don't normally see because, you know, we follow Luffy. And even here, we get to see a different side of Luffy's past. You know, we've seen like how he interacted with Shanks and that whole ordeal, but we never really saw anything about Don, never saw anything about Garp. So it's an entirely different side of Luffy's childhood. Next up, we got Drum Island. Drum Island is going to go B above Baratier. For me, Drum Island is a lot like Baratier, where instead of Sanji, we're getting Chopper this time. So we're basically beating the big bad of this arc, and then Chopper's going to join our crew. There isn't a lot of development here because we just got Vivi and we're kind of bringing her along with us. We're stopping here on our way to Alabasta, and we're pretty much just taking care of business here and then moving on. But there are a lot of pieces in Drum Island that, one, do well for the rest of the story, and two, just are really amazing in general. This is where we figure out Gold Roger's name, Goldie Roger, and then we realize that Luffy also has the D in his name, which is a huge reveal. Like, I think that's something that's overlooked, is that we don't realize that they have the same middle D initial until Drum Island. We also get word about Ace and Blackbeard. You know, Ace was here, Blackbeard was here. That's why Wapol left, and that's why it stopped snowing, because these two characters that we haven't even really dealt with yet, but we are going to see in the near future, and it's going to change the world, they were here. And that's crazy because it's not even like a huge plot point for the arc. It's something that happened. And, you know, everything that follows is the rest of the story.